Ever wondered how a forgotten war could have shaped the world we live in? Imagine a conflict so significant yet overlooked. The War of 1812 between America and Britain. Its echoes still resonate. Let's delve into the forgotten War of 1812 and uncover its impact on our world. It all began in the early 19th century, a time of global tension and territorial ambition. The War of 1812, often overlooked in the annals of history, was sparked by a complex web of geopolitical factors. At its core, the conflict was fueled by trade restrictions, the impressment of American sailors, and a thirst for territorial expansion. Let's start by talking about trade. The early 1800s were marked by a high-stakes global rivalry between Britain and France. As they battled for supremacy, both nations imposed trade restrictions that deeply impacted the United States. Britain's Orders in Council and France's Berlin and Milan decrees disrupted American trade, causing widespread economic hardship. Then there was the issue of impressment. The British Royal Navy, facing a shortage of sailors, resorted to a practice known as impressment. This involved stopping American ships at sea and forcing or impressing American sailors into service on British vessels. This flagrant violation of American sovereignty inflamed public sentiment and pushed the United States closer to war. Finally, let's address territorial expansion. The United States, in the spirit of manifest destiny, had its eyes set on expanding its borders. However, British support for Native American nations served as a significant roadblock. The British supplied Native Americans with arms, hoping to create a buffer state in the American West to halt American expansion. This support, perceived as a direct threat by the United States, was another key factor leading to the War of 1812. The early 19th century was a time of simmering tension and escalating conflict. Trade restrictions strangled American commerce, impressment violated American sovereignty, and the obstacle to territorial expansion inflamed American ambition. Each of these factors, intertwined and interconnected, played a pivotal role in pushing the United States and Britain towards war. So, the stage was set for a conflict that would shape the future of a nation. As the war drums beat, the nations braced for a conflict that would test their mettle. Now, let's delve into the heart of the War of 1812, where the unfolding battles and strategies shaped the course of this lesser-known conflict. The war saw its fair share of tactical maneuvers, strategic planning, and of course fierce battles. On one hand, you had the British Empire, a global powerhouse known for its naval prowess. On the other hand, the young United States, still finding its footing on the world stage. Let's start with the Battle of Lake Erie. In September of 1813, the American naval force, under the command of Oliver Hazard Perry, engaged the British Royal Navy in a fierce naval confrontation. Despite the odds, the American forces claimed a decisive victory, a turning point that gave them control of the Great Lake. But the conflict was not one-sided. The British had their share of victories too. The Battle of Bladensburg, for instance, saw the British forces march triumphantly into Washington, D.C., setting fire to the White House and the Capitol. It was a catastrophic defeat for the Americans, a vivid reminder of the British Empire's formidable might. The war was a chess game of sorts, with each side making calculated moves and counter-moves. The Americans employed a strategy of territorial expansion, eyeing Canada as a potential prize. The British, in turn, sought to restrict American trade and expand their own colonial territories. In the midst of these grand strategies, ordinary soldiers fought with grit and determination. They faced harsh conditions, brutal combat, and the constant threat of death. Yet they persevered, driven by a sense of duty, honor, and for some, the promise of a better future. But the War of 1812 was more than just a series of battles and strategies. It was about resilience, determination, and the will to endure against all odds. It was about nations fighting not just for territory, but for their very identity and place in the world. The war was more than just battles, it was a test of resilience and determination. As we move forward, let's explore the aftermath of this overlooked conflict and its enduring impact on our world today. With the ink drying on the Treaty of Ghent, the war was over, but its legacy was just beginning. The immediate aftermath of the War of 1812 brought about significant changes, not just for the United States but also for the other nations involved. One of the most immediate outcomes was the end of impressment. British forces had been forcibly recruiting American sailors into their navy, a practice that had been a major factor triggering the war. With the Treaty of Ghent, this practice came to a halt, providing a significant relief to the American maritime community. But the effects of the war went beyond the seas and into the very fabric of the nation. It kindled a sense of unity and nationalism among the American people. The War of 1812 was a test of resilience for the young nation, and its successful conclusion bolstered the public's faith in their country. The war had shown them that they could hold their own against global superpowers. This newfound confidence was instrumental in shaping the national identity we recognize today. The war also had a profound influence on the political landscape. It marked the end of the Federalist Party, which had vehemently opposed the war. Their decline paved the way for the era of good feelings, a period of political unity under the Democratic-Republican Party. The War of 1812 also had an impact on Native Americans. The war had disrupted their alliances and territories, and in the aftermath, they were left to negotiate their place in a rapidly changing landscape. The war marked a turning point in their relations with the expanding United States. In conclusion, the War of 1812 had far-reaching consequences. It changed the political, social, and cultural landscape of America. It ended the practice of impressment, fostered a strong sense of nationalism, and set in motion political changes that shaped the nation's future. The War of 1812, though often overlooked, left a lasting imprint on the American landscape. It's a testament to the fact that even lesser-known chapters of history can have profound and lasting impacts. So, how does a war fought over 200 years ago affect us today? Let's talk about the War of 1812, a conflict that may not have the same recognition as the World Wars or the American Civil War, but its impact can still be felt today. One of the most profound effects of this forgotten war is the distinct identities it carved out for the United States and Canada. It was a conflict that marked the end of American expansionist ambitions into Canada, resulting in the solidification of the Canadian border. The war fueled a sense of nationalism in both countries, leading to the formation of two distinct national identities. The United States emerged with a renewed sense of unity and determination, while Canada, having successfully defended against an invasion, developed a distinct national character separate from its British roots. However, the War of 1812's influence extends beyond the borders of North America. It set a precedent for peaceful negotiation between nations, a legacy that continues to shape international relations today. The Treaty of Ghent, which ended the war, was one of the earliest examples of a negotiated peace agreement. This treaty was an assertion of the idea that conflicts could be resolved without a clear victor, without one side imposing its will on the other. This concept was revolutionary at the time, and it laid the groundwork for the diplomatic negotiations we see in the modern world. Furthermore, the War of 1812 had a significant impact on indigenous peoples, whose alliances and resistance during the war highlighted their political and military importance. This recognition, although often overlooked, has played a role in shaping discussions around indigenous rights and sovereignty. Finally, the war led to a shift in military strategy and technology, influencing how wars were fought in the years to come. It was a turning point that steered the world away from the tactics of the 18th century, leading us towards the modern warfare we know today. Even a forgotten war can echo throughout history, shaping the world in ways we may not realize. The War of 1812, a forgotten conflict that shaped a nation and the world. As we've journeyed through the past, we've delved into the origins, the battles, the aftermath, and the lingering impacts of the War of 1812. This was a war that, though often overlooked, played a pivotal role in shaping the world we know today. We've seen how this conflict was sparked by trade restrictions, impressment, and territorial ambitions. The battles fought on land and sea, across borders and territories, were brutal and bloody. The war was complex, marked by victories and defeats on both sides. It was a war of attrition, where endurance and resilience were tested to their limits. In the aftermath, we witnessed the birth of a newfound sense of national identity, particularly for the United States. It was the war that gave us the Star-Spangled Banner, a symbol of unity and perseverance. It showed us the potential for diplomatic resolution, with the Treaty of Ghent setting a precedent for peace negotiations. But perhaps most importantly, we've seen how the War of 1812 continues to influence our world today. The war set the stage for future conflicts, it reshaped borders, and it impacted relationships among nations. It brought about changes in military strategies, in political ideologies, and in societal structures. The War of 1812, a forgotten conflict, has left indelible footprints in the sands of time. Its echoes can be heard in our international relations, in our cultural narratives, and in the way we perceive conflict and resolution. And though often overlooked, it serves as a reminder that even forgotten wars have stories to tell and lessons to teach. History, after all, is the greatest teacher we have.